All right, today we're going to be taking a look at another watch from Spinnaker, and I think this is the coolest watch I've gotten from Spinnaker. Maybe the coolest watch I've featured on the channel. Definitely not the best watch or the best value watch, but for pure cool factor, I've really been enjoying this. I think it's a really cool watch. Let's go ahead and take a look at it. Okay, so today we're going to be taking a look at the Spinnaker Hull California Dial Tactical Edition. So the Spinnaker Hull, this is kind of Spinnaker's Panerai inspired design. So they get a lot of their watch inspiration for their vintage pieces from famous watches in the past, and this one definitely is very clearly inspired by Panerai. You're getting the cushion case, and then in this particular place you're getting the California dial as well, which is where you get the Roman numerals on the top half of the dial and Arabic numerals on the bottom half. Panerai was one of the two brands back in the 30s that really pioneered that look and popularized it. So they're definitely kind of going full Panerai here. That said, in this particular edition of it, so this is the second edition of this watch. So they did a sandwich dial before. Now they're doing a California dial, and then this is a special edition of that California dial that we're looking at, which is the tactical edition. And so, yeah, they've kind of taken it and sort of reskinned it and given it a really different look that I think, it's something that I wouldn't have thought would work as well as it did, but it really came together really well. I think it's just a great special edition that they've done here, and yeah, so we'll be looking at particularly this tactical edition today. So the main differences between the tactical edition and the normal edition is you're going to be getting a different case finish. In this case, you're getting a bead blasted case with a black PVD bezel. You're getting a different color on the paint that's used on the indices. So these are applied markers with loomed paint, and in this case it's a gray loomed paint. And then you're also getting a totally different strap. So rather than the typical leather strap, you're getting a natural, really high quality natural rubber strap that goes on this one. So it's a totally different watch. So we're going to go through it. I'm going to talk about all the reasons why I think this is such a cool edition of this watch and just such a cool watch in general. As we get towards the end of the review, as usual, I'm going to go ahead and do kind of a little bit of a strap show. We'll show it on a couple of other straps so you can get a feel for it if you think you might want to change the strap out. And this is something to also keep in mind. Right now, Spinnaker's running a Father's Day sale on their site where if you order this watch, they're actually giving you a free additional strap to choose from. So that's a great option. They have a lot of cool straps. And then also, I have a 20% off discount. So I guess you'd call this sponsored content. This is a watch that Spinnaker did send me for free to review, so I get to keep the watch, so I'm letting you guys know that. Also, if you use my discount code, I will get a commission, so know that as well, but you will get 20% off if you use the code, and that'll get the price down to a pretty reasonable level. So all that said, let's go ahead and start talking about why I think this is such a cool watch. Let's start with the dimensions and specifications and get that out of the way. All right, so the case is a 42 millimeter case. Again, this is a cushion case, so it's kind of a little bit of a square case. So it's an interesting look, and it actually wears really comfortably because of that. You're getting a lug-to-lug of 48 millimeters, so fairly narrow lug-to-lug. Again, helps it to wear really well. And then the lugs are pretty standard 22 millimeter lugs. And then the height is 15 millimeters, which I was really surprised because when I put it on my wrist, it doesn't feel or look like it's 15 millimeters high. It feels more like a 13 millimeter case, and I think that has a lot to do with the case design. So I think they did a good job on that. Where normally I don't like particularly tall watches. In this case, I wouldn't have ever pictured that it was so tall. Probably a lot of that is coming from the dome sapphire crystal, which is fairly tall crystal there. Is probably adding to the height as well. But yeah, 15 millimeter height. You're getting a sapphire coated mineral crystal, again domed mineral crystal, 100 meter water resistance with a screw down crown, and a Seiko NH35 movement, as always with these Spinnaker watches, which again is I think the best movement for this price range of watch. I think that's a great great affordable high performance movement, and allows them to focus on putting the money into the other components of the watch, and yeah, I think that's a great trade-off. Okay, so let's talk about some of the reasons why I think this is such a cool watch, and particularly this tactical edition of the watch. So tactical edition, when you think of a tactical edition, if you're trying to do that theme, what do you think about? Well, I think that it should be something that is stealthy, something that is sleek, and it should be something that is kind of tough and rugged as well. And I think that's really what they nailed, that look. It's like they kind of took that theme and they really poured that into the DNA of this edition of the watch, and it all came together really, really well, I think. So starting with the overall design, I think it's just such a kind of a cool thing, because Panerai, if you go back in their history, they started out making dive watches for the Italian Navy. So they were military watches. And then Panerai, as time goes on, they sort of morph into this luxury brand where they have more of this luxury appeal, and they're really expensive watches. And they sort of, they still have that toughness to them, but I feel like they lost a little bit of that military aesthetic. And so when Spinnaker did their first Panerai, the first Panerai homage in the original hole, it didn't come across as like a tough, rugged watch. It had a very elegant look to it, very classic and kind of Panerai styling. And so then to take this one now and sort of bring it back to those military roots and creating this tactical edition, I think is kind of a really cool idea. And so this one, it's really designed, I think, for stealth. And it's got this rugged, stealthy look, and that's just such a cool thing. I think that's cool. Second thing that I think that's really cool about this watch is the case. You don't see many cushion case watches, especially in this price range. It's kind of an interesting overall look for a dive watch, because it doesn't have the rotating bezel like a typical dive watch. This one also only has 100 meters of water resistance, so even less than Spinnaker's vintage dive watches tend to be around 150 meters, which is less than the 200 meter kind of professional dive standard. This one's going all the way down to 100 meter water resistance, which is on par with like a lot of the Seiko 5 dive style watches. But it's still a really functional water resistance rating. It's more than I would need for anything. You're still getting the peace of mind of a screw down crown, screw down case back. So I think it's a really solid watch. And this, again, back to this cushion case. It's a really comfortable case. It's a really interesting look. It's the only cushion case watch that I have right now, and I really like it. It wears really well. I think the lugs that they've integrated onto the case, they have a nice slope to them, so it hugs the wrist really well. And then on this edition of it, rather than having a brushed or polished case, they've got this kind of matte finish on it that's from a sandblasted look, and then they've given it a matte black PVD bezel, which is just a really cool look. And I think the idea there is that not having a polished case, it sort of cuts down on the reflections, again leaning into this stealth look of the watch and sort of tactical feel of it. Because the last thing you want when you're paradropping down behind enemy lines is to have your watch case glint off of and reflect from these searchlights and give your position away. And that's cool. All right, next thing I want to talk about is the dial of the watch, which, as is the theme here, it's a really cool dial. So they've done the California dial, which again is where you get the Roman numerals on top with the Arabic numerals on the bottom. It's kind of a nice Art Deco look. It's something that was really pioneered by Panerai and Rolex back in the 1930s. So it really kind of gives you that look and feel when you see that on there. It's very elegant, and so it's again an interesting choice to have on a sort of military, tough, tactical looking watch like this. But it seems to work, and again, historically it makes sense. Panerai did use these on their military watches, this dial face. So to see it in a modern take on the tactical watch kind of works. Also on this one, the texture on the dial is really cool. It's a really interesting texture. So they've done kind of a granite texture that almost looks like, it reminds me a lot of like the surface of the moon. So you kind of get both those. You can see the smoothness of the texture where it feels like a smooth, but like natural granite that you would see, not a polished granite, but like a granite stone that you would see out hiking or something. And it's got that kind of a feel to it. But then at the same time, you kind of see those like little craters and pits in it that really reminds you of the surface of the moon. And I think it's the coolest Spinnaker dial texture. They always do these textures on their dials. I think this is the best one I've seen. I like it better than the texture that they did on the Flus, which was also really interesting as well. But this is, it's like kind of takes it to the next level. I really like looking at the texture on this dial. It's subtle and interesting all at the same time. So they really nailed it there. Another thing that they've done that was really interesting is the paint that they've used on the numerals here. It's kind of this gray paint. The markers are applied really nicely, and then they're coated in a loomed gray paint on top of it. which is in contrast to the normal edition, which has kind of the more vintage style color, that sort of patinaed lume look. And it seems like on the normal one, the lume glows brighter, so it seems like they lost some of the lume intensity by going with this gray color, but it's a really interesting color. I haven't seen that color on any other watches, and it gives it just the right amount of contrast. So again, typically on a dive watch they would go with like a really high contrast white look, because dive watches are built for legibility. But this is, again, it's going for this tactical look, this stealth look, this more muted look. And I think a lot of times when companies go for that, sometimes they'll go too crazy on. They'll do like a black on black where the markers are black on a black dial, and it's almost impossible to read. This one you get enough contrast that it's really easy to read, but you still get this kind of really cool muted look to it that I think really works really well. Again, the kind of unfortunate thing is that it seems like the trade-off has been they've lost some of the intensity on the lume, so it's not particularly bright. Again, as is typical with a lot of Spinnaker's watches, it's a very functional level of lume. You can easily read it in the dark. It's not a problem there, but it's not super bright. It's not going to last necessarily as long. But that kind of works because, when you're on a special ops mission sneaking behind enemy lines, the last thing you want is your watch face lighting up like a torch, giving you a one-way ticket to a POW camp. So that's cool. Fourth thing that's really cool about this watch is the strap. So instead of, Spinnaker, they always put this sort of vintage-looking waterproof leather strap, which is an interesting strap. It's an interesting strap choice for a dive watch, and I've talked about that on the previous Spinnaker reviews that I've done. And I always kind of wish that Spinnaker would put a fully waterproof strap with their watches, include that as an option. And this time they have. So this is a really high quality, really thick, natural rubber straps. And now natural rubber straps, I was looking online, they tend to go for a fair premium. So it's not a cheap thing to put a rubber strap like this on it. This is one of those vanilla scented one, which I think indicates a little bit higher quality. I'm not that big into the rubber behind it, but it smells nice, it wears nice, it's comfortable, it's very thick, it's got a nice look to it with some cool grooves, and it's completely waterproof, it's sweat proof, it's supposed to be tear proof, so really good strap, something that's, again, it's an interesting thing that they put on here, and it really, I think, transforms the look of the watch. It fits the theme of this watch perfectly, and yeah, I've really enjoyed wearing it on that rubber strap. I don't typically wear that many rubber straps, so this one, having a natural rubber strap like this to get to play around with has been fun, and yeah, I really come to appreciate what they've done with it, and I think that's a great way to really change up the look of the Spinnaker Hole versus the non-tactical versions, which include that leather strap. Putting this natural rubber strap in here, yeah, really cool addition. And I think rubber definitely fits into the tactical theme better than leather, because when you're escaping from your POW camp and you're crawling through fences and going through marshes and things, the last thing you want is your strap getting waterlogged or snagged on something that it's going to get you thrown back into the camp. Fifth thing I want to talk about is the crystal on this. Now the crystal, it looks cool. It's very high domed. It's got a nice anti-reflective coating on it, which has definitely been helpful in reading the watch in sunlight, and you can definitely see the anti-reflective. It seems like it gives a little bit of a blue sheen to it. And it has sort of this beveled edge, and then it domes up, so it kind of has a really bubbly look over the case, and I really like the way the crystal looks. Unfortunately, it is not a sapphire crystal, and that's the one thing that I really wish they would have just gone ahead and put the extra money in and put the full sapphire crystal in it like they did with the Bradner and the Flus. This one is mineral crystal with a sapphire coating, which, theoretically that's supposed to give you a good balance. Mineral is supposed to be less prone to shattering, and sapphire is less prone to scratching. So if you do a mineral base with a sapphire coating on top, theoretically it's not going to scratch easily, but it won't shatter either, and you get the best of both worlds. But practically speaking, I have had another watch from a different brand that had a sapphire coated mineral crystal, and I managed to scratch that somehow. So I don't have a lot of confidence in those. It should be less scratch prone than a typical mineral crystal, but definitely not as scratch resistant as a sapphire crystal. So that's not cool. I don't think there's anything particularly cool about that. I wish they would have gone with a full sapphire crystal on this, and that's my biggest complaint, I think, about the watch, is that it does not have the sapphire crystal. It's only got a mineral crystal. At the price that they're offering, I think that's what's to be expected. I mean, you would never find a Seiko in this price range that has a sapphire crystal on it. So I don't think it's unreasonable for them not to include it, but I would have liked to have seen it. All right, let's take a look at a couple of different strap options and see if we can get a couple of other looks for this.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and run through a couple of strap options. This first one here is actually kind of a Panerai style strap anyway, so it kind of matches the stylings of the whole, even though this is the tactical edition. I think it's still a nice look. We'll look at some other leather straps as we go through. Obviously black is a safe choice because the rubber strap that it comes on is black. We're also going to look at a Nato strap coming up here at the end. And one thing to keep in mind, so again, the height of the watch is 15 millimeters. And so when you put it on a Nato, that's going to raise it up another couple of millimeters. Now, the lugs actually curve down pretty good. So the Nato doesn't push it up as high as I would have thought. And a lot of times it's not as noticeable as I would have expected. It does raise the height of it up. But I think you can kind of get away with it on this. So here it is on this Barton Nato strap, which is a seatbelt Nato. So it's a very thick one. And then if you actually look at it on the wrist, you can see that it does add a good amount of height to it. But I think it wears all right.
So again, you can pick this watch up for $275 on their website. If you use the code, you can get it down to $220. If you get it now, you can also get a free strap with their Father's Day special. So a lot of good options, I think, really add some extra value to it. Is it worth the $220? I think this is primarily going to be a style choice. If you like the style of this watch, if you like the cushion case, the tactical look, there's really nothing else that I know of that's in this price range. So I think in that sense, it's a great price. Again, I think its biggest competition is going to be other watches from Spinnaker. I think the Flus and the Bradner, you get a little bit more for your money. You're getting full sapphire crystals, higher water resistance. You're getting dive time bezels, and those are only a little bit more expensive than this. But this one, again, you're getting it primarily, I think, for the style. Even at $220, I think it's a good value for the components that you're getting, but you probably could get slightly better value. So that's what I would say on this one. I think if you like the cushion case, if you like the California dial, if you like this tactical edition of it, there's not really a lot of competition out there. I think it's a great watch to pick up at that price. If you're not interested in those things, I think then, there's probably other places you could spend your money. Get something that's a little bit more classic, a little bit more tried, true, tested. This is a little bit out there, but I kind of appreciate that. I think it's really cool to see Spinnaker kind of stretching their creativity a bit here, and rather than just putting out the same kind of watch over and over again, to try and do different designs and offer something a little bit different for different people. So depending on the kind of thing that you want out of a watch, they're not just sticking with the same thing. And this one in particular, I think is kind of a step out there to do a Panerai homage with the California dial, and then to make it a tactical edition. That's something that you don't really see that often. So I think that's really cool. And overall, that's my biggest takeaway. I just really think this is a cool watch. And so if that's what you're after, I definitely recommend picking it up. You can get it from their website, link down below. As always, let me know what you guys think. If you guys like it, if you hate it. Again, it's not going to be for everybody, but hopefully you enjoyed the review, and we'll see you next time.